Brought to you by
SpectreVision Radio.
I'm Ryan Singer. I've been a paranormal experiencer, investigator, and stand-up comedian for over 20 years. My new show, Late Night on the Astral Plane, combines my love of comedy and my obsession with the paranormal. My previous show, Me and Paranormal You, ran for nearly 13 years with almost 850 episodes. This new iteration will feature interviews with stand-up comedians, scientists, and everyday people sharing their extraordinary tales. This show is a safe place for the strange and the silly. So sit back, relax, get a milkshake, and take a voyage late night on the astral plane. Because it's more fun to believe.
Welcome to the Aether. I'm your host, Nick. We all die, and we all know that. So, why is it so hard to accept? A rhetorical, annoying, existential question, I know, but one I do feel strangely equipped to answer. I chose to begin here, at death, at the end. Not as the antithesis of life, but as the rich and fertile soil from which all life springs forth. The one absolute that unifies all of humanity. The threshold between being and non-being that every one of us must face. Shouldn't that fact alone bring us comfort? I know, it doesn't. But maybe it could. Maybe the further we descend into nothingness, the more pure we become. Maybe we might recognize each other better down there. With all of our earthly structures stripped clean. Maybe once we've freed ourselves from the fear, the clinging, this responsibility to selfhood, maybe then we can be whole. And in turn, obliterate the illusion of separateness. The Death card. Key 13. It corresponds to Scorpio. Its esoteric title, The Child of the Great Transformers. The Lord of the Gate of Death. It's a card that unsettles for obvious reasons, but it's always kind of secretly been one of my favorites. This card is not a metaphor. In my opinion, this card is not symbolic in the way people often think. It's not some vague analogy for transformation. It's death. It's a one-way gate. Something you do not pass through intact. In alchemy, the material you begin with does not survive the purifying process in its original form. The base matter is broken down, dissolved, and transmuted. By the end, it is no longer what it once was. It's been completely destroyed. And then, yes, reborn. But there is no rebirth without death. I like to analyze the death card alongside the sun card. By design, death precedes the sun. The same white horse carries both figures. In the death card, the horse bears the skeletal rider. You know, the quintessential Grim Reaper. The flag in hand bearing the sub rosa, rose. Sub rosa meaning under the rose. A symbol signifying secret, things that are done in silence. In the sun card, it carries the naked child waving the veil like a banner. The implication is clear. The radiance and completeness promised by the sun card cannot be reached without passing through the underworld first. There is no illumination without descent. At the beginning of the summer, when I started this podcast, I pulled these two cards together in the unknown position of a reading. That felt monumental, especially in the light of my own history with death, losing a parent, and realizing now, almost 5 years later, that this archetypal death of self is cyclical. It is necessary. It is written in the Osirian mysteries. Osiris is slain by his brother Set. His body dismembered and scattered across Egypt. His wife, Isis, journeys to find and reassemble the pieces, restoring him so that he may rise again. This same mythic pattern appears everywhere. The Mesopotamian Inanna, Queen of Heaven, descends into the underworld, passing through 7 gates, stripped of her articles of clothing and jewelry, her symbols of power and divinity, until she stands naked before her sister, Ereshkigal, and is struck dead, only to be revived and return to the world above, transformed. Sound familiar? These are not just old stories. They are maps, guides for navigating the passages we all must take. And they remind us there is no sun without death. No flowering without the seed first being buried in the dark. For me, that truth became deeply personal the day my father died. His passing shattered the framework of my life, and in the years since, I've come to understand that grief rewires you in ways you can't reverse. And within that, there have been moments so rare and unmistakable when I felt him reach back through the veil to find me. Some things echo forward, even before we've reached them. In the course of this journey, something resurfaced twice on opposite sides of the world. The moment I happened to be in that exact spot. Something I had intentionally cemented as a tether between us the very second I was made aware of his passing. As if the past had folded in on itself and found me. Again. I will share audio of these later on in the episode, and I'll tell you why it changed the way I think about death. I think about my relationship with my late dad and how our bond continues to evolve, even and especially after his passing. In a sense, this episode is a dedication to him. Our guest today is Ivan Nevesenko, a filmmaker and artist whose work peers unflinchingly into the subjects most of us try to avoid. His personal brush with sleep paralysis became a catalyst for confronting and ultimately transmuting two very specific and debilitating fears. Thanatophobia, the fear of death, and chronophobia, the fear of the passage of time. Rather than letting these anxieties upend his life, he has woven them into the architecture of his art. Exploring mortality and temporality not as abstract concepts, but as visceral realities that shape how we move through the world. His path through fear resonates with my own path through loss. And that's why I couldn't think of a better first guest. And with that said, we will take a very short break. And when we get back, we'll hear from Ivan Nevesenko.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
So I believe it was 2020. That's when the pandemic hit the hardest. And I personally went through a series of emotional upheavals that led me to a state of constant anxiety that just kind of formed the backdrop of my everyday existence. So I went to a psychologist, and after a series of conversations, he eventually diagnosed me with two different things, which are thanatophobia and chronophobia, which are by definition the fear of death and the fear of time, the fear of flow of time, to be specific. And it's funny because I remember him asking me to avoid triggers when, for instance, you're being afraid of flying. It's considered an irrational fear because you're being afraid of something that with 99% certainty won't happen to you ever. While when you're afraid of death, it will happen to you 100%. So avoiding triggers, it was hard because I was kind of trying to distract myself playing video games and so on. But that's exactly when you found yourself being surrounded by such triggers. Some of them are simple, like that bird lying on the sidewalk being devoured by maggots, or some of them are more subtle, like a patch of gray hair on your mother's temple. So it was difficult to avoid triggers, or maybe my psychologist was just a bad one. But I realized that it's not a psychological issue, it's rather an existential issue. And that's exactly when I experienced a sleep paralysis for the first time in my life. I didn't know it's a thing. So when I woke up, I didn't know what was happening because I couldn't even move a muscle of my body, and I couldn't even open my eyes. That I realized later because I was kind of surrounded by darkness. And only after it finished, I realized that I just couldn't open my eyes. Yeah, I was just lying in my bed, and it felt like my body is no longer existing. That's kind of the feeling I was getting. I remember being surrounded by an infinite dark mass that was kind of seeping through me. It had a texture to it, like kind of an oily texture, like some kind of tar. And I remember a lot of thoughts were circling through my mind, and one of them was like, I was terrified at first, but then I realized that I'm still able to process this somehow intellectually. So my mind was there, and I thought, well, it's not as bad as I imagined it to be. Like, even if I'm dead, and at this point I was like 100% sure that I am, basically. I was thinking, well, I'm still able to process that, so it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And then I was just lying and thinking, well, and now what? So is this going to just continue forever, like for an infinite amount of time, and I'm just gonna lie in there in my bed? Yeah. And I know that a lot of people, that when they describe sleep paralysis, they describe this feeling of pressure on their chest, and I certainly understand what they're talking about, because in subsequent episodes of sleep paralysis that happened to me later in my life, I experienced something like that. But this particular time, this first time I experienced that, I felt almost quite the opposite, as if kind of a void was piercing through my body and kind of extending, swallowing me from the inside out, and it gave me this weird sensation of weightlessness, of lightness in my chest. Yeah, and then when I woke up, I was kind of trying to process what just happened to me, and it certainly felt like I've been to a very different kind of a reality just moments ago. And I also felt like something seemed to have followed me back when I woke up into the real life. And later, as the day went on, I realized that is this feeling of weightlessness in my chest. It felt really weird. And over time, I also realized that it's basically the fear of death was kind of extracted out of me when I was in this weird place. Yeah, and I can't say that I got rid of it entirely, but it was a fundamental experience to me, and it kind of sent me off to a lot of other different realizations in my life, and it kind of shaped my view of reality, how I perceive it, my relationship with death, and what's more important with life, my creative philosophy, and so on. So it was, it was certainly a very interesting experience to me. You just described it. So basically, the realization of my own vulnerability in the face of death felt uniting with all human beings in the universe. It felt like I finally felt not just understood intellectually, but kind of felt what unites us all, no matter where we came from and who we are. I think it was the moment when I realized that what stories I want to tell as a filmmaker, that these are universal stories. These are stories about two things, just death and love. And by love, I mean metaphorically holding hands with people by just exchanging these experiences, which makes us looking into the abyss much less terrifying. I really think that it's the most therapeutic thing for a person that is struggling with his own vulnerability would be a conversation like we're having right now. It could take a shape of just a podcast or a movie or other forms of art. So that kind of how it shaped my view on what I'm doing. I think form is just more of an aesthetics and your sense of taste that kind of shaped by what you were watching as a kid, what you liked as a young person when your personality was shaping up. And you just apply your own very personal experiences to universal themes. I truly think that the most profound works of art are all the same in its core about what they're telling the audience. It's just the form of it. It's what we apply. It's when the artists apply their personal experiences to that. I think it's just the form is just the personality of an artist that stands behind the work of art. But the message of a powerful work of art remains the same. It's about death or love or life. There's just three things that are important and equally universal for every human being. I think that what the difference between an adult and a kid is the lack of realization of your own mortality. And I truly think that there are moments in your life when for the first time you're thinking about your own death, and it's like a transformative experience, and it could happen in a very random moment. When I was a kid, we were playing a lot outside, and there was an attic of a dormitory in a couple of blocks from my house where I lived. And we were kind of exploring this as kids would do. And we had fun on the attic. It had a very low ceiling, but a very spacious premises in there. We were running around in there, and we were hearing a crunching under our legs as we were running around. And only a few hours later of playing on this attic, we kind of realized that we're basically running on the birds' bones that were covering the entire floor of the attic. And to us at this moment, it was fun. We didn't think about birds as living creatures. This episode, I just haven't thought of it until later in my life. I think it was about half a year after that when I've broke my arm, and I went to a hospital where for the first time doctors made an x-ray of my arm, and I remember sitting in this cold basement when they were doing all these pictures of your body, and you could see other pictures of other people just hanging on the wall in there. And somehow at the moment when I was looking at my own picture of my own broken bone, it connected with an episode in the attic when I remembered the birds, and it kind of struck me with the realization that I have a skeleton, and I have what do I have inside of my body, and what it consists of, what my body constitutes of. For a kid, it was kind of a terrifying thought, and after that, I don't know why, because I never processed this intellectually, but I never returned to this attic, though I remember we were playing a lot before that in there. But something had changed, I think, at this moment inside of me. It was about the realization of your own mortality in some way, but on subconsciousness level. One of the feature films I'm developing right now is about the journey to hell. It's loosely based on Dante's Inferno, but it's a very different story. It's a very introspective journey rather than Dante's journey when he was guided by Virgil through hell, and then just left on the other side. And yeah, it's called katabasis, which is the term that describes the descent to hell. And it's also about, we talked about form. It's about Soviet miners that literally dig into hell. That's how I applied my own personal experience and my background, because I'm from Ukraine, from Eastern Europe, which is the former Soviet Union. And I'm telling this story about a person, about this woman that literally digs into the ground and uncovers her own pieces of mosaics of her trauma, and kind of rediscovering herself through this journey.
Wow. Listening to Ivan speak, I kept thinking about how we each carry our own versions of the void. These sunken sections of the interior temple. Those moments in life where the ground beneath you drops away and you realize you've been in atrophy longer than you knew. I'm sure you've heard the term shadow work. Well, this work requires a real intimate relationship with those shadowy aspects of self, and a stark honesty with our own mortality. Our relationship with death shapes our relationship to life. And if all of nature is a constant undulating cycle of birth and decay, what if we were to treat this interconnection as a divine collaboration with the universe? What limitlessness might that unlock for us? What connections could it forge? You know, his story gave shape to something I've been grappling with myself since my dad passed. When he spoke about the absolute abhorrence of his grandfather's funeral, almost tracing a line from that spectacle to his phobia, something landed. I never had a funeral for my dad. It was 2020, and for a long time I felt robbed of that ritual. Now, I'm not conflating my experience with his, but tonight I'm wondering if the absence of that made room for the ways he found me anyway. The moment my brother called to tell me my dad had died, I pressed play on Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. My dad loved Pink Floyd, and that song is tied to memories of laughing with him in the backyard under the stars around a campfire. And since then, it's surfaced twice in ways I couldn't ignore. The first was Mexico, 2021. It was just a few months after he had died. I was mentally chaotic, anxious, clinging, in denial. We left the hotel for the first time, my best friend and I, and walked into the first bar in Puerto Morelos where we were. And again, this is the first time we had left where we were staying with her family. And the first bar we walk into, the band was playing. You guessed it. The second, Bali, 2025. 2024 had already wrung me out, and 48 hours before my flight, I'd been hit with a diagnosis, turned misdiagnosis, that at that particular time made the future feel very small. Still, I boarded the plane and flew 8,000 miles as the hanged man, to live a dream I'd never thought possible, but would quickly realize had been brought forth into being through magic. I landed, met my housemates, set my bags down, and went straight to Udara for a sound bath. A beautiful, giant sound dome built around massive instruments. Unbelievable place. Midway through, a Balinese musician stepped in with a guitar. Both of these instances, while occurring in very different stages of my grief, came through in moments when I desperately needed him. I needed a real, loud, and resonant sign that I was going to make it through the hell I was enduring. And he knew that. Because he's my dad. And he resides in the all-knowing. And because he sees through my eyes now. In his words, he is me. Katabasis. Not only the title of Ivan's upcoming feature film, but the archetype of the descent into the underworld. In myth, it's the point at which a figure leaves the known world and moves into the shadowed terrain below, seeking something essential. Carl Jung's Night Sea Journey is its twin image, a voyage across a dark, unlit expanse where you can no longer see the shores you've left or the shores ahead. They are both movements of stripping down, of passing through the dark to emerge forever altered. They teach you what's taken isn't gone, and what's ahead may already be in motion in ways we may not see until much later. If this conversation has opened something for you, I hope you'll carry it into the interior spaces only you can enter. And when you're ready, meet me here again as we continue through the gates of death into the sphere of dreams, psychics, and the mind. I now affirm the sphere dissolved and the transmission complete. So it is. If you've had a psychic, paranormal, or unexplained experience, you can call or text our listener line, The Void, at 323-332-1190. Follow us on Instagram at EtherPod, and join me at patreon.com/theetherpod. That's TheAetherPod for bonus episodes, guest interviews, ASMR, sound, tarot, and much more. This podcast has been brought to you by SpectreVision Radio. Theme music by Late Life. Created, edited, and produced by Nicole Johnstone. Dedicated to the memory of Christopher Alexander Johnstone. December 12th, 1963 to November 23rd, 2020. Love you, Dad.
Now receiving frequency transmission.
One of the most interesting ideas about ghosts was proposed by Andrew Lang, who was a fascinating polymath and author. He was one of the co-founders of the Society for Psychical Research, who took one of the first sort of forensic and scientific approaches to gathering and cataloging accounts of ghosts. And in 1897, he collected them in an amazing volume called The Book of Dreams and Ghosts. And in the Book of Dreams and Ghosts, Lang proposed the unique idea that ghosts may be the effect or the emanation caused by a dead person dreaming, and in effect projecting into the mind of those living. And that's a fascinating concept, that when you encounter what seems to be a ghost, you may actually be making contact with a dead person dreaming.
Transmission complete. Stay tuned to SpectreVision Radio. Stay.